Hi there, my name is Ron Rogers, and this video is titled, What's Better, Grass or Hard Surface? Now, I talked earlier on a video about how, students aren't being taught to land on grass, but there's a lot more to grass strips or concrete strips than I had discussed. Now, here's typical what you'd think is a grass strip. It's Greencastle, Iowa. It's hard surface, but it's got all the aspects that you'll have in a grass strip. You got obstructions off the end, you got trees. Look at that, right next to the touchdown point there are all sorts of trees, so you don't want to wind out of the left. That's not good because you get hit right here. And although this is a asphalt runway of sorts, it's extremely narrow, and which makes it more difficult. And I've heard the saying, if you can fly off a green castle, you can fly off of anywhere. But typical flying of a tail dragger, you've got to fly it till you're in the chalks. But now let's talk about some of the aspects of grass strips that are different than concrete. If you got a nice concrete runway, people have put money into this whole thing, and usually you don't have obstructions. It's very nice, it's out in the open, and there aren't a whole bunch of problems. In fact, it can be so out in the open that if you fly into some of these things at night, it's like a black hole because there are no lights. But here's one aspect of a grass strip that I'm going to point out as a consideration, because grass strips can be very irregular, unusual. They can be just, some farmer has a spot where he wants to put an airfield. And this is Blakesburg, Iowa, the Antique Aircraft Association. There's the airfield right below me. Yeah, you see it down there? Well, it can be hard to spot, and I hear from a lot of people who fly in there, they have a lot of trouble finding it. Well, that's a good thing about GPS now, is it'll at least get you right over the top of the airfield, so you can see it. But there's one at Amana Colonies, Iowa, near my hometown, that I had a heck of a time finding because it's right next to the Amana Colonies. Actually, I thought it was a little bit farther out, and even though I had GPS to cite it, it took me a lot of trouble finding it. So here we are coming into Blakesburg, and there's no Unicom, no radio. That's another aspect, so you got to make sure the whole place is clear. And they've got a guy down there with two flags. Green is a good flag, red is a bad flag, so you need to heed that. But one other interesting aspect of grass strips is they're not perfectly flat, perfectly surveyed. You don't usually have, a slope indication, or if you do, it can be all over the place, because a lot of these are just, farmers' fields that they carve out a spot. So you can come in to an airfield that you land uphill one direction, and the other direction can be just flat, like coming into Blakesburg here. Now, the runway I'm coming in here, okay, you're coming around, and where is it? Well, there's all those trees and stuff. It's a little hard to see, actually, and it's irregular. A lot of the end markings aren't the best on these things. They're kind of hard to see a lot of times. And this one slopes up. And another aspect about grass runways, there it is out there. Another aspect about grass runways is they can be very non-uniform. They can be smooth at parts and rough in other parts. And then, whether it's wet or dry. So this is fairly dry here. There's the runway coming up. Yep, there's the end of it. It had a little line there. And yeah, I'm touching down. It's very dry. It's not a bad runway as far as grass strips go. It's fairly smooth. But there, I went over a little patch of gravel there. That's something you want to watch out with your prop. That is not something you like at all. But now let's take a look at another airport here, Dacey. Now, Dacey has a north-south runway and an east-west runway. The north-south runway is very nice, and of course finding it can be a little bit of a trick because it looks just like another field out there. But the one north-south, and I'm landing here to the south, is quite nice. The east-west runway, the first part is great, and the second part gets totally rough, and I think it was really hard on my shocks one time. So there I'm coming in. Yep, see the end of the runway there? That little marking? And yeah, nice little bounce. Now, how wide is it? Well, that's a good question, because if your runway is 75 feet, 50 feet wide, 150 feet wide, and pilots normally use that width to judge how high they are when they come into the flare. But if you've got a varying width like you do typically on a grass runway, it's going to be very hard to tell your height as well. So you gotta be a little bit better at things to notice your height. Now the thing about a cement, concrete, asphalt runway is it's harder on the tires. Grass is easy on the tires, but harder on the airplane, as my mechanic says. So I'm coming in here at Lake in the Hills, and you see there's no trees to deal with, all that stuff. There's a road that they moved because somebody clipped it. It used to be just below us there, and you come in and you land on the concrete runway, and it's a little less forgiving as far as being soft and stuff, but we had an airfield where I used to skydive out of, and essentially I found a farmer who would let us use his field, and he'd mow it once in a while, but a lot of times the grass would get high, and it ended up jamming into the brakes on the Cessna 180 to the extent that it locked up a brake on the aircraft, and we had to all get out and clean all the debris out from the brakes. And then they finally made some covers to keep the grass out, because even though I plied the farmer with peppermint schnapps, it was expensive for him to mow the grass, so he didn't do it a whole bunch of time. And of course the thing about nice runways like this is, you don't really have to worry about obstructions. It's nice, wide open, a lot of space there, but they're good for student training, so you're trying to mix in with a lot of diverse aircraft. And with the high drag of a biplane, you want to fly a fairly tight pattern, because when you pull the power back, it's coming down. And of course you've got a little issue there with you got a wing above you, you got a wing below you, so clearing for traffic can be a little more difficult. Although with the tandem type seating here, you're not looking across like somebody sitting in the other seat, so that makes visibility a little bit easier. And the nice thing here is I hit it just between student banks, so I didn't have to worry about a bunch of activity there and trying to mix in with the student patterns that tend to be a little more drug out, because you're trying to give the student more time to kind of figure things out. In the Air Force, they're trying to weed people out quickly, so we flew nice tight patterns with a continual turn to final. And that bit a lot of students, because it was, as my flight commander said, you can't fly a 300-knot airplane with a 30-knot brain. So it weeded them out quickly. But this is a nice airport, Lake in the Hills, to fly on out of. And they recently widened the runway, and they're doing some enhancements and things like that. So it's turned out into a very nice little airport to fly out of. And that's where I have both this airplane and my Cessna Turbo 310 are based. Now, there's another airfield that has antique aircraft, and the one thing that I wanted to point out here on an aircraft, on a airfield that has a grass strip is, you got to be careful. You can have holes in it. It can be very rough, and especially on a tail dragger. Now, you've got a lot of good clearance between that prop and the ground since you got the nose higher, but you still keep the elevator back to keep that tail wheel planted, so you don't hopefully run into a little rabbit hole there and nose on over. At least you got some downward force on the tail wheel. But you can tell from this video just the fact that this isn't a terribly smooth runway. And I'm taxiing out from the hangar area of the museum and getting ready to take off here. And one thing I want to point out is a few other obstructions you have to worry about. And this is more typical, again, of a grass field, because people put these things in. And it's good to register them, I found out, because you don't want somebody putting a big tower off the end of the runway because you don't have it registered as a runway. But once you get airborne, of course, things smooth out a little bit. Now you're flying, but look at those trees over there. Yeah, that's that's an obstruction. You don't want to go off into the trees, or if you got winds from that direction, of course, you're going to get a lot of turbulence, especially if you're landing the other direction, and that's your flare point there. But, and then the other thing, of course, is, again, finding the grass strip. And it's always good, if you haven't flown into a grass strip like this, to call them ahead and say, hey, what's the condition? Because especially now in Illinois, we're coming off winter, and you're going to have a lot of really soggy fields, and what grass strip that you flew in last year could be NOTAM closed because it's just kind of a mud patch now. So that's very important. And they can change over time. You can the surface can become less agreeable, and if they haven't been mowed in a while, that can also be a bit of an issue. And now you can see the museum there and the airport going under the tail there. And you notice again, it's a little hard to tell. And here's coming again to land on a nice concrete runway. And I'm going to come in here and get a touch and go wheel landing. And again, it's a little harder on the tires because if you got any drift at all, you're going to scrape them. And of course, you spin them up immediately from setting there at 0, where the grass slips, and it allows you to roll them on up just a little bit better, get the wheels rolling, so you don't get that. You'll hear the screech when the wheels burn a little rubber there, as it was. It's coming. There we go. Well, that wasn't much of a screech. But anyway, that's some of the issues about grass versus hard surface runways. Grass strips can be a lot of fun, but each one almost has its unique personality and flavor to it. So I hope you enjoyed that. Thanks for watching. And I hope you found it informative and maybe a little discussion provoking. Thanks for watching.